Welcome to Speaking History, to watch another captivating episode of our series, The Historic Evil Women. In today's story, we dive into the tumultuous life of Jane Elizabeth Digby, a woman whose extraordinary beauty and scandalous choices left a lasting mark on history. From royal courts to desert sands, Jane's tale is one of unrelenting passion, forbidden love, and a life lived on her own terms, often at the cost of reputation and stability. Her journey through the heights of aristocracy and the depths of infamy will leave you fascinated and intrigued. So, let's uncover the story of this remarkable yet controversial figure. The employee had gone inside with the parcel, and postman was standing outside, hoping for the expected reward. This was the residence of a high-ranking officer of the British Navy who had become quite wealthy by rendering distinguished services in the famous Battle of Trafalgar under the renowned British Admiral Nelson, as well as by capturing Spanish merchant ships. His friends, acquaintances, and admirers would send valuable gifts daily, and each time he would promptly express his gratitude by giving the postman a modest sum as a reward. Today, Captain Henry Zangi had instructed his daughter Jean to give the postman a reward upon receiving a heavy parcel. Obviously, the reward was meant to be £50, but somehow Jean felt compelled to go outside quickly. The postman was also pleased to see her approaching, thinking that since the master's daughter herself was coming, the reward would be somewhat higher than usual. He stepped forward cautiously, came right up to her, and wrapped his arms around her neck to make a necklace. Postman had never been so surprised when Jean placed her lips on his so fiercely, kissing him so violently that the letter scattered, and the postman. This was the reward the postman received for the first and last time, due to Jean's fickle nature. Complying with her father's command, she went inside, and the postman, in a state of joyous trembling, wiped the sweat from his forehead and began to clumsily collect the letters he was about to distribute. This is a trivial feat by 13-year-old Jane Digby, who had already grown to 5 feet 2 inches and reached physical maturity prematurely at the same age. Now, behold another scene. There was an unusual competition being held in the city. Many girls from Norfolk County, England, were participating in it. The one who came to the stage dressed in the most unique and astonishingly beautiful attire would be declared the winner. Most of the girls participating in the competition were older, but the young Jean also entered the fray to surprise everyone. Then, the organizers of the fancy dress show were baffled when Henry Daggy's daughter walked onto the stage completely nude, with only certain types of bubbles attempting to cover 2 or 3 parts of her youthful body. The panel of judges declared her the winner, awarding her a prize of £1,000 because she successfully managed to drape foam stylishly. The people who came to watch the program were captivated by young Jean's bare body, and they were enjoying conjuring up the scene from just a few moments earlier through the power of imagination. Girls of her age in early 19th century England would remain innocent at that age, but this girl was entirely different. With blue eyes, golden hair, and a rosy complexion, this passionate and youthful beauty would leave a trail of broken hearts wherever she passed, left, right, front, and back. Her habits and demeanor delighted even the habitual wanderers roaming the streets and alleys. They would swoon with their noses in the air and utter, "I have lost it." This situation was unacceptable and unbearable for her parents. Her father held a powerful position in the Royal Navy, and her mother was not of any lesser standing. When they became aware of their beloved daughter's antics, they first tried to explain and reason with her, then moved on to scolding and reprimanding. When Jean remained restless despite all that, they decided to send her away, meaning to have her sent to her maternal home. At that time, scandal was flying through the entire city, and they wanted to get rid of the struggling fish on this dry land as quickly as possible. Soon their efforts bore fruit, and they found a groom. In 1823, 16-year-old Jane, who had grown into a vibrant and rebellious woman, first saw her future husband. Lord Allenborough, who became a widower 4 years ago, was 17 years her senior. While Jane had been waiting for a passionate and adventurous romantic figure in her life, her parents, blinded by the wealth and estate of this rough and unpleasant man, tied her to him and sent her off to London. Soon Jane realized that instead of showering her with love and attention, her husband preferred spending his free time in the kitchen baking pies and cakes. Witnessing this, Jane shed her role as Lady Ellenborough within days and set out to alleviate the boredom brought by her husband, who was twice her age. Although Lord Allenborough generally treated her well, he could not fulfill the intense desires of Jane's youthful and spirited body. Consequently, she began to fulfill her own needs. When a friend once asked her, "Jane, how do you quench the fire of your youth?" she replied, "We have a splendid house, wealth, and servants, and as for the fire of youth, I know how to extinguish it." On the other hand, Edward Law, known to everyone as Lord Allenborough, pampered his new bride as much as possible for the first few months before immersing himself back into managing his estate and political affairs. These were such consuming preoccupations that he could not keep a constant watch over his wife. It was inevitable that the fragrance of the flowers Jane was cultivating in his absence would reach him, but for the sake of prudence, he remained silent. Matters escalated when Jane became pregnant, and a long, simmering dispute erupted. Lord Allenborough insisted that the child in her womb was illegitimate. This tension led them to separate rooms, though Lord remained silent out of fear of public disgrace and humiliation. Fundamentally, he was a cold and indifferent man, while Jane was like a turbulent mountain stream, carried away in the current of her tempestuous desires. When she realized that her husband had become detached from her affairs, she openly began forming relationships with her lovers and preferred men, one of whom was her relative, George Lane. During a visit to her ancestral home, she met Sir Frederick Madden, a renowned scholar working at the British Museum. The two were captivated by each other, and Jane spent several nights with him before returning. In the 3 years following her marriage to Lord Allenborough, Jane indulged in relationships with dozens of young men, satiating her restless longings, surging emotions, and unfulfilled desires to her heart's content. Seeing this, Lord Allenborough, the politician within him, abandoned discretion and began introducing Jane to influential figures for his own benefit. At that time, in British society, a lord becoming a pimp and his wife a courtesan crossed all boundaries of immorality. When Lord's reputation began to suffer, he decided to divorce Jane. As for Jane, she was indifferent to such matters, as her insatiable appetite for new indulgences continued. Despite the fact that many young men from elite families longed for a single glance from Jane, she set her sights on Prince Felix Schwarzenberg, the special attaché of Austria's ambassador in Britain. She became Felix's mistress, and this new relationship brought her immense satisfaction and ecstasy. She walked the earth, but it seemed as though she was soaring through the skies. After experiencing Felix's luxurious bedroom, soft bedding, and warm companionship, she was so delighted that she would jump and shout on her house's roof, proclaiming, "I am Prince Felix Schwarzenberg's mistress." This game continued for a long time until, after 3 years, it took a new turn. The Austrian ambassador ordered his attaché to steer clear of a woman like Jane, who was notorious, vulgar, and consumed by her sexual appetite. In retaliation, Jane began telling everyone that Prince Felix had impregnated her, which was true. However, by making this public, she wanted to keep her handsome and strong lover tied to her for a while longer. These were also the days when she was awaiting the House of Lords' decision on the divorce filed by her so-called husband, Lord Allenborough. The entire country was abuzz with rumors of Jane's infamy, shamelessness, and sexual exploits. Jane herself was aware of all this and endured the insults as if they were flowers. Bound by the chains of hedonism and carnal desires, she could not even imagine abandoning the path she had tread so far. This was why, instead of worrying about the divorce, she focused on her night companion, who had left London at the ambassador's urging after learning of Jane's pregnancy. Upon hearing that Felix was in Paris, Jane rushed there to not only give birth to her child, but also to once again enjoy the strong embrace and heartfelt affection of her child's father. Though Prince Felix welcomed her with open arms, it was only for a brief moment, akin to a fleeting moonlit night, and all as part of a calculated plan. His family had made it clear they would not accept such a filthy and disgraced woman. Thus, Felix took custody of the newborn daughter and abandoned Jane. But Jane was not one to mourn the loss of just one lover. These were challenging times for her, but once again she began to look forward. After all, if debauchery was her path, there was no shortage of men. She shook off her sadness and heartbreak, moving forward on her path. For some time, she became the mistress of the great and unforgettable French novelist Honoré de Balzac. Balzac, considered one of the greatest novelists by credible intellectuals and critics, including Karl Marx in the Dictionary of Literature, later created several sensational and passion-filled characters inspired by her. These included Lady Arabella, a character in his famous 1835 novel The Lily of the Valley. This was not the first time that Jane's sinful life had become the subject of a novel. Prior to this, she had been used as a character in 3 other novels. The 1826 English societal novel Almack's by Margaret Stanhope prominently featured Jane as a central character. In 1830, the novel Exclusives by Lady Charlotte Berry vividly portrayed Jane's affair with Colonel George Anson. Then, just before Balzac's 1835 novel was published, Lady Blessington's The Two Friends was released. In it, Jane was depicted as a morally bankrupt courtesan, a manipulative, depraved woman capable of seducing anyone with a single cunning glance. According to Don Basso, many agreed that this best-selling novel offered the most authentic depiction of Jane's daily life. These accounts leave little doubt for readers about how she was perceived in her contemporary European society, from England to France, as a notorious hedonistic and sexually deviant woman. It was as if lust flowed through her veins instead of blood, an insatiable lust that no man's embrace could fully satisfy. Her restlessness remained, and after leaving Balzac's bed, Jane, who by then was a mother of 3, set off in search of yet another man. After a brief period of wandering, she arrived in Munich in 1831 and became the mistress of King Ludwig I of Bavaria. When she gained wealth and status, she moved on once more. Slipping from Ludwig's embrace, she ended up in the arms of a landowner, Karl von Wencken, and even married him, receiving the title of a noblewoman. Everyone knew Jane was pregnant at the time, and the child she carried was Ludwig I's, but she somehow convinced Karl that it was his. Nevertheless, this matter led to a serious social controversy that lasted a long time and brought her considerable infamy. About 3 years into the marriage, Jane met a Greek count, Theotokos, who had been sent to Munich for modern military training. Jane soon became his mistress. One day, Karl noticed her leaving alone on horseback. Suspicious, he followed her and saw her with the Greek count near a spring, deeply engrossed in one another. Karl confronted the unfaithful wife's lover, and they agreed to a duel. Karl won, wounding the Greek count, but Jane's heart remained with Theotokos. She separated from Karl, leaving 2 of her children with him, and began a new life with Theotokos. Together, they spent 5 colorful and beautiful years in France and Italy. During this time, Karl divorced her, and Jane, after marrying Theotokos, became a member of the Greek Orthodox Church. They lived as husband and wife for several years. However, this did not mean that Jane's immoral nature had changed. Whenever she had the opportunity, she would pounce like a predator, indulging in her insatiable desires and once again licking her lips with hunger. Their bond lasted because of their youngest child, born in 1840. When this innocent child tragically died in an accident, their relationship also came to an end. During this time, King Ludwig I's son, Otto, the King of Greece, summoned the Count as his aide and became enamored with the Count's beautiful wife, Jane. Though Jane was now 44, she still exuded the charm and allure of her younger years. She was the same Jane who had once kissed a postman passionately and stolen the spotlight at a fancy dress show. Here, however, it was not a postman, but a king awaiting her favor, and Jane had never been one to turn away from such advances. Without hesitation, she became Otto's mistress. Meanwhile, the Count was drawn into the company of other beautiful women at the Greek court, leading to their eventual legal separation. As Otto's affection cooled, Jane wandered through Italy as a tourist and later returned to northern Greece. There, amidst the towering mountains, she passionately fell for an elderly 70-year-old general named Petros, a guerrilla leader and governor of Lamia province who was fighting for Greece's independence. As his mistress, Jane became a bandit queen, living a rugged life among the mountain folk. She slept under the stars in her lover's arms, survived on simple meals of bread and cheese, and quenched her thirst with water from goatskin bags. This rustic lifestyle earned her great popularity among the local villagers. However, Otto's wife sought revenge for Jane's immoral life with the general and ordered his dismissal as governor, sending him to prison. Despite this, Jane refused to leave him. But when she discovered that her aging lover had been unfaithful with his maidservant, Jane, heartbroken, set off on a journey to Syria. In Syria, she married Sheikh Mohammed Hassan Saleh on April 6, 1853. However, the marriage was short-lived as the sheikh was more interested in her wealth than her companionship. After leaving him, Jane eventually met someone who could fulfill her desires in every way she had longed for throughout her tumultuous life. This man, short in stature but well-built and commanding, intrigued Jane not only for his intellect and interest in history, but also for his physical prowess and resilience. Together, they traveled deep into the deserts of Syria, quenching Jane's endless yearning for passion. She had finally found someone who matched her physical needs and returned her love with equal fervor. He captivated her with his intense, enthusiastic embrace, leaving her completely satisfied, a sensation Jane had sought her entire life. This man, enamored by Jane's pink complexion and experienced ways, divorced his wife to marry her. Despite objections from their families, the two were married in 1855 when Jane was 48 years old. With her new and final husband, Jane enjoyed a fulfilling life. For the next 26 years, they split their time. 6 months in their fortress-like home, living a Western lifestyle, and the other 6 months in the desert, embracing Bedouin traditions. During this period, Jane only returned to England once, but she happily came back to her desert love. Sheikh al-Mudarrib was the first man she returned to eagerly after leaving, unlike her past relationships where she never looked back. After enduring a lifetime of infamy, scandal, and ridicule to fulfill her insatiable desires, Jane, who inspired countless novels as a controversial character, passed away in 1881. She was buried in Damascus, the city of the last man in her life. And that, friends, was the incredible and daring life of Jane Elizabeth Digby, a woman who defied societal norms and paid the price for her pursuit of freedom and passion. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to show your support by hitting the like button, sharing this video with your friends, and subscribing to our channel, Speaking History. Also, let us know your thoughts about Jane's extraordinary story in the comments below. Until next time, Stay curious and keep exploring history's most fascinating tales.